Hello everyone! Welcome to Art by Caro Oliveira. Compelling storytelling. The Night Witches were a squadron of Soviet, all-female pilots who fought in World War II. Despite their great contributions to the war efforts, these women were not allowed to participate in any of the post-war celebrations and are mostly omitted in history books at school. So, in this video, I bring attention to these hidden figures of history who, although not literal witches, demonstrated the same feminine power as their magical counterparts. World War II. Who hasn't spent hours upon hours reading or watching content about this devastating world event? Chances are, you have seen at least one major Hollywood production about this war that affected so many countries and still lives in the memories of grandpas and grandmas everywhere. But have you ever heard about the Night Witches? When you think about women in the Great War, you probably think about war nurses, Queen Elizabeth fixing up cars, and Rosie the Riveter. But in several countries, namely the Soviet Union, women also played a much more direct combat role than what we've been told in school and mainstream media. Governments originally rejected the idea of women fighters, but after June 1941, when Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, the Soviets saw no other choice but to use every tool available to them, including allowing women to join the military. Women had been asking to join their brothers in the war efforts for a long time, and their requests were finally heard when Marina Raskova, an accomplished female pilot, was allowed to create an all-women air fighting squadron. 3 units were created, with 400 women each, although the number of applicants had been over 2,000. The women, mostly young students between the ages of 17 and 27, were then taken to the Engels School of Aviation, where they were expected to learn in a few months what it usually took their male counterparts years to master. This proved to be only the first of many struggles these women pilots had to endure in an aggressively male-dominated field. They soon found that their uniforms and equipment were mere hand-me-downs from male soldiers, which did not fit the women properly. The boots, for example, were too big, and they had to stuff them with ripped-off bed linens. Other essential items, like radios, radars, and guns, were also not made available to them, and they had to make do with simpler tools, such as maps, rulers, pencils, and compasses. Reception amongst their comrades was not encouraging either. Most of the male soldiers did not approve of the women fighters, deeming the front lines to be a man's place. Sexual harassment became an issue that those women had to face on the ground when not fighting Nazis in the air. More challenging even were the actual planes that they had to fly. Entitled the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, the female pilots of the Soviet Union were given antiquated biplanes, Polikarpov Po-2, which were made of flammable plywood and originally made only for training or for crop dusting. Are you still watching? If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell button to receive notifications. Biplanes, however, were much slower than the average World War II plane, and this turned out to have one advantage. The slower speeds meant that the women could turn the planes around more quickly and therefore avoid enemy fire more easily than faster, less maneuverable planes. On the other hand, they could only carry one bomb under each wing, and this meant that several attacks had to be made each night, sometimes over 18 rounds for each pilot. These rudimentary planes would have been completely unviable in a daytime attack, and so the 588th Night Bomber Regiment had to use the cover of darkness at night for their attacks on German headquarters. The Polikarpov Po-2 was not capable of enduring much weight either, and the women of the 588th could not transport ammunition to defend themselves and had to fly much lower than other planes. However, because of their wooden construction, these planes did not show up on radars. The first warning the Germans would have of the incoming air attack were the sounds of their engines. At first, a first wave of pilot fighters would fly over the German bases, attracting their glares and spotlights, which provided much-needed illumination for the second wave of air raiders, who would then unleash their bombs on the unprepared Nazis. This second wave would sometimes turn off their engines and glide down for their attack, creating a bigger surprise. The sound of the wooden planes swooshing down at night won the women of the 588th the title of Night Witches. In fact, the psychological impact of the Night Witches on the enemy was almost as important as the physical damage, as it created an oppressive environment of fear and anxiety. The hatred towards the Soviet female pilots was so great that any German pilot who struck one of them down was immediately awarded an Iron Cross. By the end of the war, the 588th Night Bomber Regiment completed over 30,000 missions, dropping over 3,000 tons of bombs and 26,000 incendiary munitions. Their last flight was on the 4th of May, 1945, going within 60 kilometers of Berlin. The Germans surrendered only 4 days later. Raskova flew to the front line in 1943, but her plane never made it back. Her funeral was one of the first state funerals of World War II, and her ashes were buried in the Kremlin. Although the Night Witches Regiment was one of the most highly decorated Air Force units in the Soviet Union, it was not included in the Victory Day parade because their Polikarpov Po-2 were too slow. Mainstream Western media often focuses on American or British achievements during World War II, so it comes to reason that the Night Witches would be left out of the picture in most cases. However, this is a story to tell to all of those who downplay the participation of women in the war, especially those who do not respect all the auxiliary efforts made by all nationalities of women, which proved to be essential to the healing and recovery of a broken Europe. Get the real-time video process of this video's illustrations and more by pledging today on my Patreon, link in the description box down below. If you enjoy watching this video, then you will love these videos as well. Thanks for watching and see you there!